Hello, everybody. I'm Raina from Garden District Bookshop, and this is Virtual Happy Hour. I want to thank you all for joining me and introduce you to Kalynn Bayron, who is the author of Cinderella is Dead, which came out last summer, and I loved it so much. If you haven't read it, you must. And this summer, she has a new one coming out that I can give you a little sneak peek of, This Poison Heart, which I have the arc of, but doesn't come out until July. And we're going to talk a bit about that book as well tonight. So I'm going to click the button and bring Kalynn into the room. Hi, Kalynn.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Pretty good.
Good.
Since this is Virtual Happy Hour, we usually start with, what are you drinking?
You know what? I don't even know what this is called, but it is very low key. Like it has, I think, like 5% alcohol or something like that. Like I am a lightweight and I'm not trying to be on this live stream with a lampshade on my head at the end of the hour. So we're just gonna keep it low key with this red juice wine. Yeah.
What happens in Virtual Happy Hour stays in Virtual Happy Hour.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, as long as it's tasty, it doesn't matter. There's no judgment. Do you like it? Is it tasty? Yes, drink it.
Right.
So one of the things I did want to talk to you about, we were kind of just touching on this before, is Cinderella is Dead, first of all, for everybody, is a retelling of the Cinderella story that is absolutely not like any book I've ever read. And I love fairy tale retellings. So when Bloomsbury originally sent me this, which actually they sent me as a manuscript, and I think I told you this was like part of my pitch to get you to come on Virtual Happy Hour. I was like, so they sent this manuscript to me, and when I first got it, it's bound and it's great, and I'm reading it in bed, like I'm half awake in bed, and the pages fell out because they're not. I mean, it's not it's literally just some pages that have kind of been stuck together, and the pages fall out, and it's like midnight or later, I don't know, and I'm like, oh no. And there's because I don't know if they're in order. And I'm like in my bedroom in the middle of the night in my PJs, like, okay, this is page 201, 202, 203, like piecing it back together. Like, and I was like, I have to finish this book. So that's my endorsement for Cinderella is Dead. And you guys can get it in actually real book form now. It is out just in hardcover, which is great. And then This Poison Heart comes out this summer.
June 29th. We moved up the pub day a week. So so you can get it June 29th now.
All right.
Yes.
So there you go. That was like a whole week early.
Yeah.
Because my copy still says July 6th.
Uh-oh. Yeah. It'll be there sooner.
There you go. For everybody, you can get it a whole week sooner now.
Yes.
And I see you guys watching. So if you have any questions at all, any comments, just tell us where you're watching from. We'd love to see where you guys all are. Please post it in the comments. We will see your questions and we will answer your questions right now in real time.
Yes.
And I will post the link to both of Kalynn's books in the comments as well, so you can easily get those. So did you have any in-person events for your for Cinderella is Dead?
No, I went to Winter Institute in Baltimore in January, and that was, and Cinderella wasn't out yet, but that was kind of my first like face-to-face thing. And then after that, nothing. Like it's been I got to go into Book People in Austin to sign some copies. But everything was virtual, like out of the gate for me. So, having a book come out during a pandemic was definitely not on my bingo card of things that might happen. And then also having a second book come out when we're still kind of in this weird space, was also not on my bingo card. So, I'm just, I'm an optimist, and so I'm trying so hard to just look at the bright side of all of this. And the bright side is that I get to talk to people all over the world who I might not have got to see face to face with all these Zooms and Instagram lives and, just everything. So it's, I think it's really been a chance to kind of connect with readers. Even though, it's not face to face, which I'm hoping maybe sometime later this year, I can get to see some readers face to face, some booksellers face to face, but we're just rolling with it for now.
When do you anticipate any in-person events for This Poison Heart, or not yet? I mean, it's so hard.
Not yet. Not yet. But I have a vaccination appointment on the 2nd. So to get my first shot. Yeah. So, who knows? I'm really hoping that maybe, towards the fall, we can start looking at some more in-person things. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. And I think there will be kind of a market, even though the book's been out a little bit, because all these authors haven't had an opportunity to do any in-person events, that typically, the tours happen right around book releases, but I feel like there's going to be opportunity for some events later as things become safer to really be out and about. And then even though maybe the book has been out for a few months, I would be like, yes, please come sign it in person, because there's going to be a market for people who haven't seen it, obviously, or haven't read it, that they're just hearing about it right now. And then there's going to be fans who just want to come out and hear you talk and like get you to actually sign your book and all things like that.
I'm just, it's one of those things that you just, you kind of think about when you're, debuting, and I didn't really get a chance to do that. And so it's still something that I just think about all the time, and that I'm looking forward to. I hope that gets to happen sooner than later.
Yes. I'm absolutely optimistic as well, because I'm like, I need to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we'll see. I mean, who would have guessed like last summer that we'd still be like, I don't know if it's gonna happen this summer, a whole year in advance. So
right. Yeah. It's been a lot. Yeah. So here we are.
So and you're over in Texas, has because when Texas opened, took away their mask mandate, right, and really fully opened up, and then Mississippi did the same thing on the other side of Louisiana. We were all sitting here going, "Oh, great! Like, where do you even go?" Like,
same here. Yeah, it's a mess.
Yeah, so that's what I was wondering. Like, how does it feel to be like in that?
Yeah, so like for me, I am not going to stop wearing a mask anytime soon. I might wear one even when all this is over, just because I also didn't get the flu or a cold. I haven't been sick in the past year. So, masks for me, it's just a way of life now. However, when the mask mandate was removed, people just kind of, there were a lot of people who weren't wearing masks anyways, around here. So, for some people that was just like kind of, licensed to just run amok. So, it's been, I see a lot of people still wearing masks. So that's a positive thing. And then for the people who are not wearing them, just stay away from me. Don't come close to me. So
I actually live close enough. I live in the neighborhood next to the French Quarter. And it's just like any tourist area. You don't end up going in there very often unless you need to. There's certain shops that are only in the corner, certain restaurants that are only in the quarter. And so you'll save it up and you'll be like, okay, there's 3 places I need to go. Let's go into the quarter now. It's worth it.
Yeah.
But I haven't been in the quarter in, I think maybe once since COVID started, for the exact same reason. There's a shop that I love, and it had masks on their Instagram, and I was like, I need to go. I need to go in because their masks are really cute. And I'm working in the bookstore, so I need a mask that not only can you just wear, like run into the grocery store or whatever, but something I can keep on for 8 hours a day.
Right. Yeah.
So I finally found that place, and I went, and today we walked back in, and I actually got another mask, and we went to another store to see we had doubled up the places we needed to go.
Yeah.
And it was crazy there. Like, there were people everywhere. And
Yeah.
And because you're outside for most of it, like the French Quarter, and I've been to San Antonio a bit, so that the Riverwalk area,
The Riverwalk,
where you're technically outside, it's kind of got that same like false sense of security going on as the French Quarter. So you go into the shop, you put your mask on, but like if there's 50 people on the sidewalk, you should probably have your mask on too.
Right. Yeah. It's like, it's so crowded all the time. And there's people just walking around and like, oh, we're outside, so we don't need a mask. And I'm like, you're literally like shoulder to shoulder with like 20 other people. So put the mask on, please. Please.
But I have gotten a lot of cute masks, and I agree that I think I will wear them more in the future.
Yeah, for sure. It's just, and I have this like collection of different masks, and just like my kids have, 20 masks, and my youngest daughter is in back to school face to face. So and they have to wear masks. So she's got like unicorn masks and rainbow masks and all that. It's like, oh, it's it's a pandemic, but you have a unicorn mask, so I guess you're good to go. So yeah, she's everybody has their own little collection. And I made like this like station where I kind of keep my keys when I come in the house, and everybody has their own little hook, everybody has masks, so it's like a thing. It's like, we kind of changed our whole way of life. Like when we go out of the house, there's this whole thing. So yeah,
and I've got like a couple in my center console in my car, and like one in my bag, my purse, because you never know. Even though I have the station right by the front door too, same idea. Got keys, sunglasses, masks right there, some hand sanitizer. But sometimes you just walk out without one. So especially kids. So my son is 14, so we often leave the house without a mask.
Yes. Yes, I have a 14-year-old too. So I feel your pain. Yeah.
I have learned the things that he, like the shows or the animes or mangas that he really liked, though, because when I told him, well, I'll buy you some masks that have what you want on them, just tell me what you want. And he started sending me, links to different Etsy's and Teespring and things like that. I was like, oh, okay, so you really like Beastars? So you really like I'm learning the shows and like that you actually really like, because you'd be willing to wear this on your face and let everyone know this is what you like.
Yes. And my 14-year-old is extremely into anime as well. And so it's like, you want a mask with what is like All Might or whatever his name is from My Hero Academia. And there's like, there's just all kinds of, you can get a mask with like anything on it. So yeah.
So lots of things I didn't know that I've learned in that. So like I said, I like really love fairy tale retellings, and I'm just wondering if like when you set out to write kind of both of these books, actually, but we can talk more about Cinderella is Dead since that one's out and people have read that one for sure. Did you set out to write a Cinderella story, or did it evolve kind of into that?
So I knew I wanted to do something to do with Cinderella. I knew I wanted to do some kind of retelling. I was watching a lot of Once Upon a Time in 2016 when I was writing it. But I just, there have been a lot of Cinderella retellings. And a lot of them, are great. But I didn't want to like hit the same story beats. I wanted to try to find another way in. And so I thought, okay, well, if I have the Cinderella story and I want to, I want to know what happens after. Because for me, like fairy tales, I love fairy tales. But I feel like when we're looking at a fairy tale, we're zoomed in on a very specific part of the story. The bad guys are already kind of established. We know like who the good guys are. It's, usually a damsel in distress. And then there's like a prince or a king, and he's a knight in shining armor. And then you're like married and ride off like into the sunset. And that's the
That's
end.
your
And
only option.
yeah, that's for me. I was just like, well, if we kind of zoom out a little bit and look at what happened before, what happened after, those are the most interesting parts of the story, the parts that usually aren't told. So I was like, okay, well, maybe I can start there. What happened before, but I didn't. That's kind of where I started, but I didn't really want to do Cinderella. I wasn't really concerned so much with Cinderella. It was more about the story. So I was like, okay, well, if we set this many, many years after Cinderella, what does the society that this story has kind of taken root in, what does that look like? And what does that look like for people who do not fit into the boxes that this society has created for them? So if if the story says that you have to find a prince and get married and ride off into the sunset, what if you don't want to find a prince? What if what if you don't want to be married? What if you are a literal child? You're 17, you're 16, you don't want anything to do with that right at this moment. And what happens then? And everything that I do, everything that I write kind of starts with a question. And for me, that was really, well, what happens then? What happens if you're not the person that this story is speaking to? And then from there, it just kind of snowballed. It was, all of these interesting little things. And so, that kind of combined with my own love of fairy tales, and also kind of a lack of fairy tales that centered queer Black girls. That all of those things for me just kind of fell together to kind of create this story.
One thing that happened to me when I was reading Cinderella is Dead. Okay, first of all, I want to say that your story, when you said it after Cinderella, after the fairy tale we already know, it kind of set us up in a way, I feel like, to be more of where we are today in society, because we do have all of these things we do or we've always done because that's the way they are. Because there's a story that happened 200 years ago, founding fathers did this thing, and that's why we do this thing. And I'm like, I don't even like those are papers I read, stories I hear, history books, they tell me these things, and then that's just what we do now. And that whole setup, as soon as you were setting this up, because it is the Cinderella fairy tale, and they live like it's their founding document or their Bible or their, and I was like, oh, that's what we do. know, and this idea, there are people today, and there have been through history, and there will be as we go on. They're like, I don't like that. Let's see if we can make a change, And in a fairy tale world, you get to make a huge change. You get to make these huge changes.
Yes.
And in real life, we make.
Yeah, I wish they kind of worked a little more like fairy tales sometimes. Sometimes I get asked, like, how do you kind of exist in this fantasy kind of setting and still make it relatable? And I think that's kind of a very human experience, to have these things that kind of exist in your community and your society, and they don't always, they're not always fair or helpful or to a lot of people. And so it's kind of like, how do we kind of question the status quo? And so in Cinderella is Dead, the question is everything. The questions, why are we doing this? And where did this come from? And why do we continue to do this when we know that people are being actively harmed by it? Why do we continue to do things that we know are wrong? Sophia, my main character, Sophia, her parents understand fully that what is happening is not okay, but they go along with it anyways because they just don't see any other way. They don't know anything else. And I think that's a very human kind of experience to have, something that we see a lot of. And also, I wrote this book in 2016. It was an election year. it was, this fairy tale retelling, but I really leaned into the way that a lie kind of told over and over again becomes the truth for some people. So there's a lot of themes in there that feel very relevant, and I wish they didn't.
Yeah. I mean, you did an amazing job. I get that. Yeah. I wish you didn't have to. You didn't have to write a story that included those things so that we understood them better, which is, I mean, truly good fiction does that, interprets the real world and makes it somehow relatable to everybody, not just the people that are, in the real world, maybe 10 people experience this, but you're writing it in fiction in a way that makes it a little bit more universal. So when 100 people read it, they understand it.
Yeah.
And your books, both of them do that. One of the things that I really did love in Cinderella is Dead too, is that you gave attention and believability and depth to your main character, who clearly we're rooting for, but also the side character, like you were saying, her parents, where they might not be doing the thing that I think is they should do for her, but at the same time, I understand them. I understand why.
Right.
The fear of change and just kind of, why don't we just get along? That's going to be easier, is real. As a parent, I see that sometimes. I have to stop myself. I go, oh, but this is just going to be easier. Just do it this way. And then I go, well, that's not what he wants to do. Okay.
Yeah.
You have to I get it. And then, and I'm sorry, I'm so bad with names. I'm bad with names in real life and character names. But she has friends who, they're like totally on her side, but decide to do what everyone else does, to go and do that fairy book thing that they're supposed to do. And when that happens, I'm like, you feel it, like, no, please, that's not, don't do that. But I completely understand why they do it.
Erin, who is, Sophia's kind of, her first kind of crush, her first friend that was more than a friend, or that she wanted to be more than a friend. Erin is not a bad guy. I kind of get I get feedback sometimes from readers who are like, Erin is kind of a bad guy, or Erin is kind of selfish. And it's like, well, no, it's, Erin is the other side of the coin. Erin is what happens when you conform because you just want to survive. You're just trying to stay safe. You're just trying to survive. And what that looks like for different people. For Sophia, it's like, I need to survive, so I need to get away. But for Erin, it's like, well, I need to survive, so I need to stay. It's really just a different perspective. And I think writing Erin's character was one of the most kind of emotional kind of things that I've ever written, because to get inside of her head, it required me to think about what kind of impact this place has had on this young woman who just, she wants the same things that Sophia wants, but she has no hope left. She is just hopeless. And so she is saying, I'm going to do what I need to do to survive. And that means being matched, letting go of what she and Sophia have, and trying to move forward that way. And that's heartbreaking. That was really tough. It was tough to write.
I can see that for sure. And how that people still do that today, but even 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and you imagine the number of people that made the decision because they did feel like there was no other option, and go back further than that, and that percentage goes higher and higher, and that part of it is heartbreaking. But you wrote it so absolutely believably that at the end, I didn't dislike any of those characters. I understood them and the decisions that they made, and I was just like, okay, and even with Sophia, she has these moments where she considers it. She's like, maybe they're right. Maybe that would be easier. Maybe that is something I should do. And that almost, you know, that is a little heartbreaking in that she has to take this moment to really consider it. Is it worth it? You know, or can I cover up and live that way?
That, you know, Sophia's journey is really, you know, less about self-discovery as it is, you know, kind of, she starts out knowing who she is and what she wants. But, you know, society is pushing back against her at every single turn. And she really, you know, she's really just looking for her community and her family and her friends and to kind of meet her where she's at. She doesn't really understand why, you know, why can't you support me and help me and protect me and care for me the way I need you to? And the answer being, well, we just can't, because this is the way things have always been done, is just not good enough for her anymore. So, and she, that the questioning that she does, you know, when we're 16 or 17, I think sometimes we think we know everything, and then something, you know, we're kind of presented with a problem where it's like, oh wait, let me think about this. Maybe I don't know everything that I thought I knew. I know I was like that when I was 16 or 17. I was just kind of like, I can take on the world. And sometimes that comes with a huge burden. And I think Sophia kind of shoulders that. She feels like she has to liberate herself, but she also has to do that for her community. She doesn't want to leave people behind to just kind of deal, because she could go, right? Like her and Constance could go. But they make a different decision.
That piece right there, that's the piece that's truly inspirational, right? As a reader, when we're reading, like, okay, I did what I had to do for myself. I could do that. Who couldn't? We could do that. But then taking that extra moment to look back and go, wait a minute, maybe I can make a bigger difference. Not just for me, or maybe not just for 2 or 3 people, but could I make a change that's going to affect more people? And that's why writing the fairy tale, you know, the difference for most of us between the fiction and the reality. And then you have these few select people throughout history that have looked back and gone, nope, I'm going to bring y'all with me. Or I'm going to do my best to bring y'all with me. One piece of Cinderella is Dead, like when I was reading it, I do remember this, I was so vividly, is in Cinderella's tomb. When they go into Cinderella's tomb and you don't know what's going to happen, like as a reader, you're like, okay, like you don't really know. There's little hints and clues, and they have to go to Cinderella's tomb. Okay, cool. But you don't really know why. And I mean, the book's been out for like a year almost. I feel like I could say why, but I also feel like I shouldn't spoil things for people. But when you do, when what happens, okay? I was like, no, she didn't. Oh my God. Yes, she did. That is happening. That's happening. Okay, I'm reading this.
Yeah, I have just such a love of horror and horror film, horror novels. I knew that I was going to take it there when I pretty early on in the process, just because, you know, Cinderella has some of the answers that we need, but if we're 200 years later, how are we going to get there? You know, so I was like, oh, we're going there for sure. So, you know, I love all things scary and creepy and, you know, dark. And I think that a lot of these fairy tales are in their kind of earlier versions, they are gruesome. And so I did question myself, just, you know, okay, is this too much? Is this kind of too creepy, too scary? And almost immediately I was like, no, let's just go and do it. So yeah, that's one of my favorite scenes in the entire book.
Yay. I loved it. It's working. Okay. But I didn't find it to be scary. I guess it depends on, you have to think about your audience, I suppose. But yeah, it wasn't scary. It was just like, wow, okay. Like bold, and I'm so happy we did that. Do that every time there's a little bit of twist. Every time an author does that thing, you're like, are they gonna? And you don't know if they're gonna pull back or they're gonna go in. It's every time they go in, I'm like, yes, you made the right decision. You did it. Good job. So with this Poison Heart, it's a secret garden kind of retelling, inspired by. That's the way I would say. Cinderella is definitely Cinderella's Dead is definitely inspired by, and is kind of a retelling in that you're changing the world that we imagine. The Secret Garden to me seemed more inspired by than a straight like retelling.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's just it's one of, several influences for this story, and I think that for me it was The Secret Garden and Little Shop of Horrors, and kind of Greek mythology, and so all of those things together, kind of created this. And again, I have a real love of horror, of Gothic fiction. And so, we have the house and we have the secrets that are kind of held within it. And all of these just weird and wonderful things that I love, I got to put together in this book. And it was just, I love it so much. I love Cinderella's Dead, obviously, but this book is it's just so close to my heart. It's all of the things that I love. And because it's contemporary, I was able to just lean a little more into my own kind of personality and, kind of craft these characters that I would love to be around, Briseis and her moms. And, it's just kind of, it's just, I had a blast writing it.
Well, it shows.
Yeah.
It does. So you're saying you're like Briseis? Briseis. There's an S on the end too. Briseis. That you? That's you? Or you as a teenager?
There's definitely some there, but I think I'm definitely probably mom. I think I'm more mom Sandy. I'm more like her. And I think it's I let my oldest daughter, she's kind of like my beta reader, and I let her read it, and she's like, yeah, this is you. Why'd you you're in this? And I was like, yeah, it's a little bit, not all the way, but enough to where she recognized it. So I just think it's funny. I'm no longer the protadigest of the story. I'm like the mom.
Right. So, you've graduated to the mom.
Yeah. And that works. So
well, that's good. You can run it by and be like, is this something I would say? Yeah, you'd say that. Okay, good.
Yeah.
It's working then. That's what I was going for. Sounds like a mom. All right. Good.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. So did you start out with The Secret Garden, or did you start out with mythology? What was your spark? What was the piece?
It had to be Little Shop of Horrors first. I am a musical theater. Yeah, I'm a musical theater fanatic. So it had to have been that first. Because I remember watching that movie as a little kid, probably, oh my gosh, elementary school, a small child, and just being obsessed with that movie. Along with lots of other things, Wizard of Oz and Annie. So I think it's, I think that, and then later reading The Secret Garden, but it always felt to me like it was supposed to be, and it's a book, obviously, that is a staple in kind of children's literature. But I read it and I just remember feeling like, oh, this was supposed to be scary. I wanted it to be something that it wasn't. I wanted it to be kind of scary and creepy, and just because that's how my brain works. And so, years later, when I'm kind of, brainstorming and thinking about what I want to do next. And I'm like, oh, I could, I could put these things together. So, and then I saw in 2017, I saw an article about this guy who he tends a poison garden somewhere in England somewhere. And he has to wear like this full biohazard suit, and the garden is locked and only he is allowed to go in. And inside are the most dangerous plants on the planet. And I was just like,
I think I found it.
I
found it.
Yeah.
Elm Wolf Garden is a poison garden in the UK. Okay,
that's it. Yep. And I was like, that's perfect. Like, what happens if you are the one who has that job? Or, like, what if you went in there and there was something just completely unexpected there? Yeah. So, I mean, I was like, let me just throw everything that I love into this story. So, and that's kind of what I did. And they let me. So I'm like, yes, I'm gonna write that.
I love it. I love it. I love when you stumble upon like one little piece like this, like you stumbled upon the information about this weird poison garden in the UK. And you're like, that's there it is. There's the piece that's gonna make this different than that, that's the little spark of something that's there's a little one of the twists.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So are you a theater nerd from like, did you go to school for theater? Because I went to school for theater. So
I went to school for music. I wanted to be an opera singer. And yeah, and I am a classically trained vocalist. And then I thought maybe I would do musical theater. I love musical theater. It's probably like it's writing, it's musical theater, it's classical music. Like those are just things that I just are so much a huge part of who I am. And I think I kind of have that, I have references to Hamilton and Hadestown in This Poison Heart. And in other things that I'm working on. So like, that's just like my brand. But yeah, I love musical theater.
In This Poison Heart. I mean, they live in Brooklyn or in the beginning. So when they're making these theater references in my mind, I'm like, well, of course they like live in New York. So
yeah,
everyone in New York sees Broadway plays all the time in my mind. So it doesn't seem like weird at all to me to be making those references. Plus, being a super theater geek myself, I'm like, oh yeah, I get that. Like, I know it's just seamless. But I can see how like some people would read Hadestown and like not be understanding what you're talking about. It's not Hamilton. Most people know.
Sure. Yeah. Everybody knows Hamilton. Yeah. I think that those little times where I'm kind of referencing other musicals that I know it's kind of like, okay, maybe not everybody will know about this, but certain people will know about this. And that's always fun for me because I just love musicals.
Yeah. Do you get a lot of musicals coming through Texas?
So the last one that I saw was Wicked here in San Antonio. And that was an amazing production. Like they did such a fabulous job. It was perfect. And they get a lot coming through. I don't know what's going to happen like from now on, but I just, I can't wait till things kind of where we get to a point where I can see some more things because I would just love to see things in person. I watched Hamilton on Disney Plus.
I had.
Yeah, and I've never had an opportunity to see it live, but the watching it on Disney Plus was as good as it was going to get for me. So that worked, and I'm just in my living room just screaming the lyrics and crying and just being dramatic. So yeah.
Hamilton was one of those things that I avoided in the beginning because as soon as something has that much hype, I'm like, I don't know. I'm just gonna wait this out. We'll see. And so I don't know how long it was that I waited, but months I waited. And then I was like, all right, well, I'll listen to the soundtrack. I mean, we'll see what this is all about. And then, of course, you're like halfway through the first song. You're like, I understand. You're 2-3 songs in. You're like, yep, I'm in. Okay.
Yeah.
And you just listen to the whole thing. And then you have your favorite songs and
Yes. That's how it was for me too. I had the soundtrack first and, I didn't know if I would have an opportunity to see it. And even when it came through San Antonio, it was so expensive. I couldn't go.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't want to go alone because me and my kids love the soundtrack. So I was like, well, we all got to go. And I was like, well, who has $2,000 to spend on, tickets for all of us? I have 4 kids.
Right.
So I was like, we're just going to stay home and listen. We're just going to act it out ourselves in our living room because there's no way. So, yeah, but maybe one day, I don't know.
Right. I mean, one day it will come through because I feel like Hamilton's going to be one of those ones that tours for a while. Like they could keep going on that for some time. Like Wicked has been touring for quite a while.
Forever. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. And they can still sell pretty good tickets to Wicked. So Hamilton's going to be that way.
Yeah,
and
I'm sure.
Especially, I think after this year or last year and then this year, I mean, our theaters here, the Saenger Theater is our big Broadway theater, and it shut down halfway through last year's season and has had nothing going on this season. And we had some weird stuff happen before COVID last year around the Saenger. A building that was right across the street from the Saenger Theater collapsed. And it's a whole big thing here. Like there was issues with the construction of it, and they were constructing it at the time, and it collapsed during construction, and that was right across the street. So for a while, the theater was completely shut down. Everything was canceled for like a couple of weeks. And then they opened it up a little on the other side. You could get in. So they were still doing that because the theater itself wasn't damaged. It was just the block and the road and on the other side of the street.
Right.
So then they were open for like one more show, and then COVID happened. And so they had some trouble before that. But yeah, they're shut down this entire season. And I haven't really heard about next season, what their intentions to sell tickets or I don't know.
Oh my goodness. I just feel so terrible for like all of the performers who, are just completely like, you can't go back and do the thing that you need to do. You can't go to work. And, I know Broadway's shut down, and it's like, here we are a year later and it's, creative artists are really struggling, I think across mediums, you know what I mean? Because that kind of, it affects authors, it affects, bookshops, it affects Broadway. It's like all of these very like creative people, and it's like we can't go and do our job, and so it's been tough, and I feel terrible for them. Like goodness.
Well, thinking about it too, like there's musicians who've been able to do some like Facebook Lives and some virtual event type things. But even that, you've got one here, one there. It's not, and charging for it is difficult. Like somebody who would pay $40 for a ticket to go see this band in a venue would be like, oh, you're going to charge me for a Zoom event? What? Like, which is not fair, but it is the nature of the world, I guess, people.
Yeah.
And so they have some outlet, but not a lot. And authors were doing virtual book tours and stuff, which is not at all the same, but it's a way to get out there.
Yeah.
And I think about actors though, like, what are you going to do? A monologue in your living room? Like, what am I going to
Yeah. Like what I watched, so they had a live, what was it? A live reading of The Princess Bride.
I watched that.
Oh yeah, me too.
Awesome.
So I was like, oh, this is fabulous. Like that's something I would pay for. I did pay for. And, it's, so actors are having a tough go, but that was amazing. And everybody looked, so great, and it was just that I love that movie. That's still to this day one of my favorite movies.
Yes, absolutely. And they were having such a good time too. It was so great,
Yes.
like seeing them, like some of them the first time that they had like seen each other in such a long time, and you could really tell that was a big part of the fun was seeing them interact.
Yeah.
I watched one that was Ferris Bueller's Day Off. It was a reading of Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Oh, okay.
And it wasn't the full script, though. It was like excerpts. It wasn't like they did scenes, but it was similar where they had a lot of the original actors back and they were reading the scenes. And I was like, yeah, it's something about the nostalgia of it and seeing them together in a way that they haven't been in a long time is fun.
Yeah, that's fun. Yeah.
So I guess there is. If you were in an iconic movie 20 years ago or more, then you've got a market for a virtual event.
There might be some work for you. Yeah. Everybody else, too bad. Yeah.
Sorry. So yeah, we've had, New Orleans is a big movie and TV show, like place to film. And in the beginning, like everything was shut down. And now you see they have to meet certain requirements, and there's like these really stringent union requirements, and I don't know what they all are, but you can tell because there's very different, like they come out with the tape and they've got everything all lined out, and you can see where they're going to be filming in this house today, so the parking spots are blocked off and the sidewalks taped out, and they've got these mask stations and things, and I know, they're doing what they
do you get to have you ever seen something being shot? Like, do you see oh yeah?
Yeah. Actually, this happens like quite a bit, actually. We accidentally walked through the set for Benjamin Button, yeah. When we lived in the French Quarter at the time, and they had blocked off a couple of blocks, and they had put dirt down over the pavement, and they had these old cars and buggies and stuff, and we're just like, whatever, walking home.
Yeah.
And they're like, get it out of the way, and I'm like, oh, sorry, look, oh my gosh, it's dirt. Like, you just don't notice. Like, it wasn't blocked off very well. We probably were like literally in the middle of them filming because it wasn't blocked off. So they probably like taken those things away, and we're just like walking down the street. So yeah, that happened. A few years after that, when my son was like maybe 4, just a few blocks from the house, they were filming. I don't even remember what it was called. The movie was called, but it had Ron Perlman in it.
Okay. And
we walked down, and my son and I walked down, and I was just like, we're going to be quiet. We're just going to sit on these steps, and we're just going to watch, because it was cool. You can see them. The guy runs and gets in the car and speeds off, and they do it like 10 times, so you see the process. And Ron Perlman comes over, and he just, and he's like, oh, hi, how are you? And I said, asked my son, we just walked down to see, don't want to get in the way if we're in the way. And he's like, oh, no, that's cool. And he sits there and he talks to him for like 5 minutes.
What?
And my son's 4. My son has literally no idea. He's just some guy, and he's nice, who mom was like nice to, so he's nice. And we're talking about the car, and the Ron Perlman's just like, oh yeah, you like cars. He's a 4-year-old boy. He loves cars. He loves, his things. So he's just like time. And he's like, all right, well, you have a good day. And he just sort of nodded at me and walked off. And I was like, okay. So,
yeah.
And so yeah, they film stuff here a lot, and those are like 2 stories of actual like worth telling. But sometimes they're just filming things on the block, and you're like, oh, it's probably NCIS New Orleans, right? Because they was here for a few years. So I think it's the last season for that this year. I heard. I don't know.
Oh, huh? I'm not sure.
You should Google that if you love NCIS New Orleans, because I could be totally wrong about that.
Yeah, I'm trying to. So I think I was like 12, and I was living in Portland, Oregon, with my mom at the time, and she was like, we're going to go downtown because they're shooting a movie down there. And I was like, okay, I don't care. I was like, I didn't want to go. I was like, what are we gonna be in the movie? She was like, no. I was like, well, then I don't want to go. But she made us go down there, and it was Antonio Banderas and Sylvester Stallone were making some movie they were in together. And I just remember standing there and seeing them, and then just being like, I'm ready to go because I don't care about any of this. I was like 12. I didn't like know. I'm like, I don't care. So yeah, it's just funny. Like, I'm just trying to think of like random celebrity encounters, like David Copperfield. Do you know who David Copperfield is?
I do.
The magician.
Yeah. Weirdly enough, I have a David Copperfield story. It's actually my mom's story, but I can tell it.
Tell it. I want to hear it.
So my mom was working at a little restaurant downtown in Fort Myers, Florida, which is where I'm from. And David Copperfield walks in with like a couple of, I don't know, his people, where they are. And they sit down, they're going to eat. And he asks my mom, and my mom always has worn like rings on almost all of her fingers. He's like, oh, give me one of your rings. So she takes it off, gives it to him, and he does this, like, I wasn't there to see it, right? So he does this sort of magic trip, and her ring ends up in the middle of like this hourglass, I believe. And then they break it and it does the thing. And I'm like, that's so like a weird, of course, a magician wanders into a restaurant like just to eat some dinner. And it's like, let me, I'll get, and does this thing like this. But that's a real story.
Perform like a magic trick for you just out of the blue. It's so random. Yeah, my parents took me to a David Copperfield show in Anchorage, Alaska when I think I was like 5. Like, I have a very vivid memory of this. Like, I remember sitting in the audience on the aisle, and he's on the stage, and I don't remember everything that was happening, but he started to do this bit where he's like, okay, we're gonna fly. And I was like, what? I was like, he's gonna fly. And he was like, I'm gonna take somebody with me. And I was like, me, like, I want to go. And so I stood up and I stood in the aisle, and he started walking down the aisle, and he made eye contact with me. But then he took somebody else, and I think it was a plant. I think it was like a person that they had already like picked. And I just remember being devastated because they got to fly. Like, they flew on the stage. And I was like, yeah, there's probably like liability reasons he couldn't like pick me and take me to fly.
But you're 5. Like, now you understand that.
Yes, but at the time I was absolutely devastated. I was like, I was gonna fly, and this other person like cut me off. So just the most random story ever. Yeah.
That's hilarious. But you're probably right. Like, that person was probably all like harnessed up and everything. Like, probably like under their clothes and all, they just clip it on so that they didn't, because I can't imagine like picking actually a random person.
Yeah, no way.
Yeah. But I can also totally see your 5-year-old self like kind of not paying attention and kind of not understanding, and then they go fly, and you're like, I understand that.
Yes, and I was like, it's my time now.
This is my moment. That's awesome. That is awesome. I'm trying to think of like other celebrity encounter. Oh, I lived directly across the street from Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie when they moved to the French Quarter.
What?
There's a fun thing. Yeah, they tried to like radio stations and stuff tried to get me to put like a webcam on my balcony and things. Like, it was crazy pants. Yeah, for like a few weeks. There were just people contacting me out of the blue, and they're like, oh, are you, you Raina Nielsen, you live at this address? I'm like, who is this? I'm like, oh, well, I saw blah, 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 that you live, do you have some new neighbors? I'm like, what do you want from me? And there's one lady, she like got her like boss on the line, and she's like, no, we are not like spying or anything. We just want to put a webcam. It's not going to be at their door. I'm like, I'm not stupid.
Like, sounds like spying. Like, sounds exactly like spying. Yeah.
Like spying. And unless people. Yeah. Right. And like, you're not even talking about cutting me in for all of the like webcam like clicks that you're going to be like profiting off of my balcony. So let's not do that. How about we don't do that? But yeah, that was that was like the only time that I've really had any kind of interaction or got to see how paparazzi works a little bit, because they stake out that like when I walked out of my building, they were just lined up there for months and just waiting for them to come out of their house. And
that's
to the
awful.
point, right? That's what I was like. And they were nice. I mean, here's the truth is about most of them, at least that I saw, like they're trying to make their money. You know, there was a group of guys that were sleeping in their car. There were 3 of them, and they were sleeping in their car. But if they got the picture and sold it to a magazine, they could pay like half of their year house and everything. They're like, one good picture of them will be like half of my bills for the year. And I'm like, oh, that's a societal problem. That is a culture problem.
Yeah.
Not you. Yeah. I understand you, guy, are trying to just make a living. And to be honest, this is a pretty good gig. You just hang out and shoot one good picture and that's it. You know, and they were like, that was when my son was like a baby. And they would, oh, you're going to the coffee shop? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I had him in one of those little carriers. They call him a caterpillar because he's in this little carrier. It's really little. And oh, how's the caterpillar this morning? Like, I mean, they are super sweet to me, but at the same time, stalking my neighbors. So it's like,
yeah, like, oh my goodness.
I like want to be nice to you, but you're also making me uncomfortable. So yeah, it was a weird situation for a while.
Yeah. I can't imagine. Yeah, don't let me live across the street from Brad Pitt. I don't know. I'm gonna act a whole fool. Like, just yeah.
He's the
very
one
attractive man.
Yeah, he was the one where I thought of the 2 of them, because at the time, that was like, almost 14 years ago. So they were both doing a lot of movies at that time. And when you look at the 2 of them, I thought that if you saw them on the street, that Angelina Jolie would be the one that really stood out and looked different. And that Brad Pitt could have blended in. I mean, he's good looking, but whatever. He's a guy. That is not true. If you see him on the street, she just have her glasses and kind of a hat on, and she's tall for a lady, but whatever. Otherwise, she's just got jeans and a t-shirt on. You don't notice her. Brad Pitt, no matter what he did, he was a good-looking man. He put sunglasses on. Oh, there's a good-looking man in his sunglasses. Like, to the point where you're like, look at that guy. Okay. And then you're like, oh shit, was that Brad Pitt? Like
yeah.
No matter what he's trying to do, he's in jeans and a shirt. Oh, he looks good. Like, he's a hat. Yeah, that guy looks good. Like, something, yeah, no. And that took me by surprise, because if you had told me before that, I would totally guess that he'd be the one to blend in, but nope. All right, lady, we have pretty much reached our hour. I want to say thank you so much for joining me. I did truly, truly love both of these books, and I can't wait for whatever you've cooked up next. And I'm here, front row center for all of that.
Okay.
And like, you should totally get back on that vocal stuff. You put out an album, and it goes like with the book album combo. I am here for that.
Look, I gotta find a way to like incorporate that somehow into my promo. So yeah.
You can tell them at least one bookseller will help you out. I will be telling everyone that they've got to listen to and read that book.
Yes.
It starts with one. All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you for the people who commented. And Kalynn, thank you so much for joining me tonight for Virtual Happy.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Good night.